Hi guys, welcome to today's call. We have the topic for today is the changes you want to see in the lives of others are about you. And this one can be really subtle or it can be in your face all over the place. And I want to share an example. To me, was in my face and all over the place, but to the person that was having the experience, they just couldn't see what was going on. So this person has their own business and they have a friend in another state that says, "Hey, I'm really struggling and I just need some help. I need some support." And they've been friends for years, and he knew that person as a quality employee before in the past, 20 years ago when they used to work together. And he said, "Yeah, come on out. I'll give you a job. I'll get you in." Well, the guy comes out here and he helps. He doesn't have a space in his own company in the beginning, so he finds like 5 other companies for him to go interview with. And he goes out and he tries all these things, and he keeps getting fired within hours of starting employment. And this is a construction field, so it's very competitive, and you have to be able to do the work at a really good pace in Las Vegas in order to stay employed, unless, of course, there's just nobody available, and then they'll hold you until they find somebody else. But so this person was here then, now in Las Vegas, and saying, "Well, I'm just going to go back to where I was." And the person who I know who owns the company was like, "No, just give me a little more time and I'll have a spot for you." So about 3 weeks later, they did let their friend stay in their home and lent them a car and gave them all of this freedom. And about 3 weeks later, he has a spot for him in his company. And he sees why he didn't hold the other job. He's very difficult. He's overly emotional. He's in his 60s, by the way. He's not a spring chicken, so there's a lot going on in his life behind the scenes. And he's easily confused, and he just doesn't have the stability. His body hurts, and he's just not a good worker for this job anymore. And of course, my friend who hired him is like, "Oh, I feel so bad for him. He's got nothing. He's got no one." From the outside, you can say, "Okay, you're being very compassionate. That's very generous of you. But you need to keep in mind that you have to meet your own needs too and not just overgive." My friend's like, yeah, I got that. No problem. I understand that." But what I see happen over the next 3 months is I see my friend paying somebody who's not producing. I see my friend, again, letting him use his car for all of this time without charging him anything. I see them getting together and doing things at my friend's home, helping him do stuff. But again, there's no accountability as far as, this is an exchange. He's just showing up and doing stuff and helping and being generous. So it looks on the surface like this is a win-win, but I can feel that, okay, this is bubbling. This is going to be a disaster. And I'm telling my friend, "Hey, are you okay with what's going on?" He says, "Yeah, I'm okay. I'm just really trying to help him. He really needs to save money and get a car. And he keeps wanting to get a $10,000 truck, and I keep telling him he can't do that because he's not in a position to do that." So here's my friend, of course, looking at his friend's life, saying, "This is what it looks like, and this is what needs to happen." And I'm telling my friend, no. Okay, you're looking at your friend, telling him this is what needs to happen. You are trying to tell him what he has to do and how he has to live. And I'm telling you, this is not going to go over well. You need to support him where he's at with what you're willing to give freely. He says, no, I just need to push him a little and he'll be okay." And I'm thinking, no, your friend is in this position because he's not willing to be pushed. He's not going to just be okay. So we're watching all of this happen. And it goes on, like I said, for 3 months. And in the end, the way their relationship ended was in a huge fight. Both of them feeling that they were overgiving. Both of them feeling that the other is too demanding. Both of them feeling that they couldn't stand another minute in each other's lives, and to this day have not spoken again. And this is what happens when we see something in someone else's life and we decide that it needs to change. Now, I'm not saying that's always the case. I'm saying the way it was being done. Now, if you come at it from a different direction of support and love, and again, meeting somebody where they're at, and if his friend had said, yeah, I plan to get a car and I need $10,000 for it. And he said, "Oh, I suggest you don't, but if this is your life, you have your own choices." But instead, what had happened is my friend gave him a whole month of work and said, I'll hold your money and give it to you at the end, $3,000 at the end of this month. And then you will be able to get the car that we talked about. And that's not what happened. So my friend then demanded his car back, and then, again, the other person went out and spent the money the way he wanted to spend it, which, again, is his privilege. He made the money. But it was the expectation that the other person's life needed to look a certain way that brought them to the place of the end of their relationship. And because they both were giving to the other without communicating the truth of what was going on inside of them, they didn't know how to reconcile that other than, I'm angry, you've disappointed me, you're not taking care of yourself, you're not living your life the way you should, and therefore I want nothing to do with you. So that's my big example for today. It's a little different than any way I would do something in an experience, because what I find that if I want something for someone else, that's great. And if I'm willing to give the support for that, that's even better. But if it's not what they want and I push it upon them, then now we're in a lose-lose situation. Is there anyone else that has had something either similar or watched this kind of experience in others?
Yes, Christine, I have.
What did you go through, Peter?
It was really quite funny. I was working with this guy, and we became quite good friends. And he lived in a really run-down mobile home on 20 acres of land. And I said, hey, and he had some money from his parents. He had like $50,000 that his parents left him when they died. And I said, well, Scott, hey, let's, I'll help you build a house, because that's what I used to do for a living.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, okay, maybe, when we talked about it for a couple of years and nothing happened. Well, then one day, we weren't working together anymore, but one day I heard that his house burned down. So I called him up and I said, Scott, I heard great news. He said, what? I said, your house burned. And I said, now do you want to build a house? So anyway, long story short, I spent, probably better part of a year and a half working every Saturday and sometimes Sunday with him to build a house. And we built him, a really nice, solid, straightforward house. And he didn't have to borrow any money because the labor was free. And then he's living in his house. It took me a while to get it, but all around his house, it's like a mess. I mean, there's beer cans on the ground. There's old sleeping bags. It's just a mess. And in his house, he was living the same way. And so when I got done there, he went back to work. The roof on the porch wasn't quite finished, and this wasn't finished, and that wasn't finished. And I just went back there 2 days ago to return a tool, and he wasn't there, and I just looked at it, and it's still not finished, and the tools are still lying around the yard. And during the course of this, here I am trying to help him build a really nice house, and then he can have a girlfriend, and and we were doing a really good job. And it just kind of struck me, that's not Scott. That's not that he lives. And it took me a long time for it to get to be okay with me that this is the way he lives. And it's his house, and it's just full of junk all over the place. You can't really see the floor in the living room. So it was a big let go for me to realize, he's not living with my values. He's not looking at life through my screen, through my grid. He's looking at life the way he looks at life. And it looks different than the way I look at it. And neither one is better than the other. It's just we're different. And for me to get upset that we build him a nice house and then it's a mess, that's just me being upset. He's not upset. He's happy.
Wonderful. So that's a good place with it. You didn't have to lose your friendship over it.
No, no.
Nice job.
No, we're still friends, and he's still Scott, and I'm still me.
Now, the flip side that goes past that, unless somebody else has another story they want to share, I'm going to go into the next segment. So the flip side that goes past that is looking at, whether he's in a healthy situation or not. And here's the thing that I like to bring to people's attention too in these kinds of situations is, right, so maybe he's living this way and he's happy because it's the way he feels safe. It may not be the way he would prefer to live, but in this situation, he's doing the best that he can, because we're all doing the best that we can all the time. And so he's meeting his needs the best he can. And if he had his druthers, that's how my mother would say it, if I had my druthers, I would rather have this but because I'm in the position I am, I have what I have. And when people don't let go of their burdens, when they don't open up some of the things that they've had to shut down because of trauma or emotional responses from others, and the blocks that we put in our system and in our own thoughts, then we find it easier to live these other ways. And again, I'm not saying anything is right or wrong ever. I'm saying that we're all doing our best all the time, and that sometimes the best I can do is have a messy house because my emotional and mental burdens don't allow me to get past that. When we offer support to people, this is why we have to offer them support where they're at. And it may be a different conversation than just, hey, let's build your house. I'm expecting you to keep it clean. It may be, hey, I'm noticing that this is a pattern for you, and I'm wondering how you feel about it. I had an ex-brother-in-law who had that same kind of pattern where everything was a mess all the time. And he lived in a small trailer, and he had his beers laying around and his other things laying around, and this was his comfort zone. And when we sat down one day and we had a really long, deep conversation, he explained to me that the first person he was in love with broke his heart, and he just never really recovered from it. And he said, I don't really enjoy living this way, but I feel safe and I feel comfortable. And again, not those clear words, but this is the whole communication boils down to, this is where I'm at. So when we're looking at the lives of other people, we want to know, okay, so what drives us to want something different for them? They're on their own journey. They're on their own path. They're doing their own thing. Why do we need them to change? One of the things is when we see dysfunction as healthy beings, if we see something dysfunctional in someone else, we're like, oh, I know that doesn't have to be that way. And I want to give you the support not to be that way. But we don't necessarily dig deep and find out, okay, why are you having this experience? Why do you need it? And if we try to just take away their experience and give them the healthy solution, it's kind of like we were talking about before where we know what it's supposed to look like at the end, and we're asking this person who's here at the beginning, at the start line, to jump all the way to the finish. And it just doesn't work that way. You can change them for a moment, but because they didn't go through their process of getting to the finish line, they're likely to revert back to any other behaviors. I even had the same thing that it really cleared some things up for me as I looked back at my memories. When I had my first house, my mother came over, and she's a carpenter, and she started building cabinets for me in my kitchen. And then there was a couple of things left undone, and I should have finished them myself, but life just kept getting in the way. And eventually, my mom came back a year later, and the drawers to one set of the kitchen cabinets that had to be custom made, that I'd already cut all the wood for, but I didn't know how to put it together properly, I just left it. And I went 3 years not finishing those drawers. And I heard my dad one time when my mom was over, she was offering to help. Now, my mother was older, and she really wasn't in the position to do this work anymore. And she was about to tell me, oh, Chris, just let me do that for you. And I heard my dad say, "Hun, this is her life. If she really wanted those drawers done, they'd be done." And that's when it clicked. Oh, my goodness. I had left this burden as this weight on top of my head for 3 years. And why didn't I just do it? And I looked at all my reasons for not doing it. And I thought, part of the reason I'm overwhelmed is I'm not doing the things, the pile. The pile is there. So I sat down that day and I made a list of everything that I still hadn't done, that I wanted done. And I looked at that list and I said, okay, if you're still here on this list in 6 months, then I really don't want to do you, and I'm going to just drop you because I don't need this burden anymore. Now, the first month I got the drawers done, no problem. But we got to the end of the 6th month and the kitchen window still didn't have trim on it. And I thought, I could have already done that. It's not a hard project to put trim around this window. But I really just don't care to do it. And so I took it off the list. And I lived in that house for 15 years, never putting the trim back up on the window after we did the remodel. But I wasn't upset because I realized these are all my choices. And when somebody else wants something for you, if you can communicate, but this is my choice. This is what I want. I know it doesn't look that way to you. So people came in often because we had a very social house and lots of kids. And people would come in, oh, hey, I see that's not done. And I said, yep, I'm not doing it. Oh, really? I said, nah, yeah, I'm never doing it. Eventually, this was so funny. Eventually, a friend of mine said, it bothers me so much that that's not done that I will do it with you if you'll just let me. And I thought, this is a nice time to spend time with my friend. And I said, okay. And so we went out, we got the trim that I wanted, and we did the window, and it was done. It's funny because the reason I didn't want to do it is the trim that I originally wanted was no longer available. It was a custom order, and they stopped making it, and I couldn't find it again. And I only had one piece, and I needed 3 pieces to trim this window. And that was why I didn't want to do it. So when they weren't a burden to me, they weren't forcing me, I just thought, oh, yeah, actually, I don't mind. I was just not doing it because I didn't have what I wanted. It was just that kind of experience where timing and preparedness. Finally, somebody else really wanted it done, and I was like, oh, well, this will be fun to do something together. Another thing that I want to bring up that drives us to want something for others is our own fear. So, for instance, with my kids, when they were in school, I used to have this fear that, if they didn't learn failures in their life and they may not be okay and they wouldn't have what they wanted. And out of my 6 kids, none of them have gone to college. They've all, one of them started college but didn't finish. They've all just said, this wasn't what I wanted. School wasn't what I wanted. It didn't give me the experience I want. And now I have my kids doing exactly what they want. I don't burden them with, oh, your life should look like this. I just enjoy watching them create their reality. I still can get into that fear, and I can still say, oh, maybe you should. But as long as I'm not overgiving in any way, then I can just say, oh, well, that's just a belief system that I was given. It doesn't necessarily apply to them. I mean, they're creating their own lives, and if I try to force my belief on them, then I'm in the way and will probably bring some destruction to their lives. Anybody have any good stories that go along with that?
I can really relate to that. I have kind of a double layer of that because my husband and I have 3 kids, and actually they're all, as I look at them, I think they're all doing amazing. But my husband has, like, for example, if they have issues of their health or something, and my husband has had a heart attack, and he's been doing all kinds of stuff for his health in terms of meditation and, like more of the alternative type of things. And so I keep seeing him trying to get the kids to do like he's doing. And so it's kind of a double layer then, because I say to the kids, I say, wow, you're really finding your way, and I'm cheering for you. And then to my husband, I say, they need to find their own way, and he'll agree with that, but then it's almost like he can't help himself, and it's partly really that fear thing, like afraid that he somehow fell short as a parent, because a lot of their stuff is due to stress or whatever. And so it's kind of, it's sort of like I'm trying to not put my ideas on my husband, and at the same time, it's like he's putting his ideas on the kids.
Right. That's tricky too, isn't it? When you see it happening clearly, just like I was doing with my friend, I said, I can see this, but we can't change them any more than they can't change the other person. So we become observers, and we be compassionate, and I never do the I told you so as my personal opinion, only because I've never found that turn out in a good way ever. So if anyone has an I told you so, I'd like to hear that. I have not found a good example of an I told you so story. So that's excellent that you did that, Emily, that you're giving him that space and still just watching.
And the thing I get a little bit uncomfortable with is when he does that to the kids, then I feel for the kids. And again, all I can do is sort of be a cheerleader and say, you're really doing good, and look at how you found your way on that or something. Mm-hmm. But it's hard for me when he's putting that on them.
Now, have you sat him down and had a conversation with him about it? Does he know how you feel? I mean, you said you did, but does he truly know? Does he see what he's doing, or does he not see it?
When we talk about it, he does, but then I think he has a great deal of fear, and it's more than his it sort of like blows away his understanding.
Right. So I have a suggestion for situations like that. When you talk to somebody and they're agreeing with you and you can feel that everything is copacetic and they're not just agreeing to, stop the conversation or get out of it, but you can feel that this is something that they understand and they want to participate in. But in a moment of fear, they're different, is to have an agreement with them that I'm going to remind you. Say, we've talked about this and you're still doing that. Is there something you haven't communicated? Is that why you're still doing it? And he's like, oh no, I just don't think about it in the moment. Okay, well, in the moment, I'm going to be the one that reminds you that, hey, this is what's going on right now. So in my relationship with my partner, he had a son before we got together, and there's physical issues that my stepson has. My partner is so afraid for his son that he tends to go into that fear and that anger. Now, when we're calm, hey, you don't really want to treat him that way, do you? I mean, you don't want to yell at him. You don't want to make him feel like he's bad because he has this experience, do you? And he says, no, I love him with all my heart. I'm heartbroken every time this happens. So what I started doing is, when the moment would come and he started to raise his voice, I said, hey, we're not doing that, remember? And he'd be like, oh. And, sometimes he wants to, it's like holding somebody back in a fight, and he's like trying to yell around me, and I'm like, no, we're not doing it. It's like that kind of thing that's happened.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
But if there's communication over time, my partner did break that habit. And it's a beautiful gift to give someone, to give them the support that they want when they're in a fearful place.
Right. That's a good idea. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And it goes back to habit, because when we get into fear, we get into habits. And even when we see something clearly, like I'm to him and he sees it, but in a moment of fear, it always goes back to the bigger pile of habits. What is he most used to doing? What keeps him safe? And if he can get them to understand what he's learned, then they will be okay and he will be safe. I mean, Mama Bear probably makes you want to jump up and say, stop it. And but you learn love and respect him so you don't do that. But I know that Mama Bear feeling when somebody's doing something to your kids is like, oh, no, you don't.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate your suggestion.
Certainly. Do we have any questions or more comments about the topic? Okay, then what we're going to wrap today up with two small things. One is the exercise is we're all doing our best, and anyone that's having trouble seeing people as that they're doing their best because it doesn't look like what we expect, you can try that exercise, and it'll give you some support and some ideas of things to do to see things differently than when you see them from a place of discomfort or pain, looking at someone else thinking either they're failing or they're not going to have what they need. This exercise will help you have some tools to work with in those moments. And then my last thought for today is, if we're going to create something, we might as well create what we want instead of what we don't. So when we're looking at somebody else's life and we're feeling like we don't want something for them, instead of staying focused on what we don't want for them, let's start looking at, what do we want? How can we create something together that feels good for everyone? And that's kind of what me and my friend with the window frame, the trimming of that window, that was the conclusion, is we came to a win-win where we both got something we needed out of the experience, and nobody felt obligated or pushed around or bossed or anything. It was a nice way to live a day. Well, you guys, you have a great day. Our next call is Friday. We're only having 2 calls this week. It's a holiday week for most people, spring break and Easter coming up. And that's the primary reason for the short calls this week. But there will be posts each day with exercises and things that you can look at. And I look forward to your comments and your emails. And it's great fun.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.